Hello everybody, Calamity here, and I am ready for the Elden Ring DLC. Today's video is going to be all about the Spiral Abyss. In the video, I'm going to talk about the teams that I used, as well as the enemies that you're going to be going up against in floors 11 and 12. Just going to briefly go over them and how they spawn, the positions that they're in, and if they have any weaknesses you can exploit. And then I'm going to talk about the teams that I used. Now, if you guys didn't know, I actually streamed my whole attempts on YouTube. You can check out the VOD if you want. This video is mainly for those that don't want to check out like a 2-hour VOD and just want to know, okay, what teams did you use? What are the strategies for beating floors 11 and 12? And, like the quick tips. I want the quick version. This is basically a video for that. So there should be timestamps down below if you want to just quickly navigate to certain parts of the video, if you only care about floor 12, floor 11, or, the team section, stuff like that. So feel free to use those, but that's a lot to go over, so let's get started. So this is the lineup for the Spiral Abyss. Before we take a look at the enemies, let's take a look at what the blessing is. So after 10 seconds, when your active character uses their elemental skill, damage dealt by their normal attacks is increased by 20%, and a tally will be kept when this character's normal attacks hit opponents. The tally will increase by 1 up by 1 every 0.1 seconds, and once it reaches 3, you'll unleash a shockwave that deals true damage to nearby opponents, and the tally will be reset. Up to 1 shockwave can be unleashed this way every 1.5 seconds, and the effect and tally are cleared when the character leaves the field. So off the bat, characters that can take advantage of this that come to mind are like Yoimiya, because normal attack damage are her forte. But also obviously for the new 5-star Chlorine, because when you use her elemental skill, her pistol attacks are counted as normal. And Arlecchino as well. When you use her elemental skill, you have to do a charge. All of her normal attacks get, they're getting the advantage of this buff. True damage, for those that don't know, just means damage that it completely ignores any opponent's resistances or defenses that they have. So it's literally just like the raw damage unaffected by defense. But yeah, there are plenty of characters that can take advantage of this blessing. However, don't feel like you have to play around it. I didn't. I was able to, fully clear the abyss without taking full advantage of it. Um, I still use, teams like Hyper Bloom, but we'll get into that in the team section. So for now, let's talk about floor 11, because there's honestly only one chamber. I feel like that's probably going to give people some trouble, and that's chamber 1. Because this is one of the chambers where you have to defend a little, the little obelisk thing in the center, right? And if you don't know, some enemies will aggro onto you, but a lot of the enemies will only aggro onto the obelisk thing that you're supposed to protect, the ley line. I forgot what it's called. They will only focus on that. So the best way to like pull them off of it is to use characters that have taunt. So if you have characters like Amber, Ganyu, they can taunt enemies off of it. Zhongli as well. You can also pull enemies away by force using characters like Venti, Sucrose. And if you are using Coshood, obviously don't stand in the center and then hold your elemental skill. You're going to pull them towards the thing, pull them away. And that'll be a good way of saving a lot of the HP of your obelisk. Because remember, when the pyro slimes die, honestly, when a lot of the slimes die, they explode. Like the pyro slime will explode. The cryo slime leaves a bunch of misty ice that does damage to nearby stuff. So like, you just be careful where the slimes are dying, because obviously killing the slimes themselves is not the hard part. It's the after they die damage that you have to worry about. And obviously on the hydro cryo, you can get frozen if both of their elements hit you, which can be annoying, and then you have to mash out of it. So just be careful, mind your elements, and just use your CC or your taunts wisely to pull them away, and it's not too bad. So let's move on to chamber 2. Just Geo Bishops. I don't even know what elements they turn into in the second half, but they're pretty easy to kill. If you are having trouble with their attacks and they're hitting you too hard, don't forget you can always use shields. Same can be applied for the veteran tainted water splitting phantasms. These are the more tinky ones that you've probably seen exploring Fontaine occasionally. Uh, they're tanky, but just remember that don't bring any, Hydro units and you'll do fine, and you'll get free reactions off of them. So if you're doing things like Hyper Bloom, if you're doing Vaporize, you can just bring a bunch of extra, buffs for, like, let's say like Diluc or Ling or something, and then you can just wail on these things because you'll get vaporized all the time since they're Hydro. But not too bad there. And then 3, you got some Fatui skirmishers here. These are the gun boys, and then the Animo Boxer. Remember, he's always going to come to the defense of any Fatui member, and then you have to deal with some Ruin Drake Earth Guards. Not too bad, right? I don't think you guys really need strats or advice for this, but if you do, like, leave a comment. I can do my best to help you out. But these are pretty straightforward, I think. And then the second half, we have the Jade Plume Terror Shroom. If you're not familiar with this boss, please bring any sort of Electro character, because if you bring Pyro, this is one of the few bosses in the game that actually summons ads, and it makes it more aggro. Whereas if you bring Electro, it will actually heavily stun the Jade Plume. It might do some attacks where it, like, runs around and stuff, but you can just shock it, and then it's pretty much gonna, like, lay on the ground for several seconds, giving you plenty of DPS time to wail on it, and then you just keep applying the Electro again, and it'll do an attack, it'll fall down, rinse and repeat till it's dead. It's a pretty easy boss fight. When you bring the right elements, of course. Floor 11 is pretty easy. Also, remember there's a bonus for Electro and Hydro, so feel free to use any characters that will help you out in these situations here. Pretty easy stuff. Now, floor 12 is where things get a little bit more difficult. We definitely saw a lot more people struggle with this one for sure compared to the last one, which was a bunch of shield break. This one does have a bit of shield break, but it's more of like there's a lot of enemies to deal with this time around. But let's talk about each chamber. So honestly, the first chamber is probably the hardest, in my opinion. This is obviously going to change from player to player, depending on what characters you have, depending on what your account looks like, stuff like that. But in my opinion, this one was the hardest one. So on the first half, you have the 3 Primal Construct bots here. We haven't seen them in a while, but do try to kill them as quickly as you can, obviously for time reasons. But if you don't, they do this annoying thing where they go invisible and you have to chase them around. And if you don't have, like, Electro plus Dendro and do a quicken reaction on them, it can be a pain to, like, target them and find where they're hiding and stuff. So really, just any AoE or grouping character like Kaza, remember, they can pull them together and just AoE them down really, really fast. Then that's just the first wave. The second wave, and I hate that they do this, is that they will spawn a Ruin Guard behind you on the opposite side of the arena. It's just a Ruin Guard, nothing fancy about it. It won't chase you because you're at a distance when you're killing the Primal Constructs. It will most likely do the attack where it turns its back and then it shoots the rockets at you. If you are using a bow character or any sort of ranged, feel free to shoot the weak points. I'm sure you already know about the weak points on the Ruin Guard on the front and the back. If you want to do that for the free stun, but you don't have to. And then that's the second wave. It's just 1 Ruin Guard. The third one is you're going to have to fight 2 Ruin Drake Earth Guards. Again, just like the Ruin Guard, I'm sure you're familiar with their weak points. They're pretty obvious. Try to fight them, like, try to group them up together. If you're using Chlorine, try to position yourself in a way that your shots line up so that you're piercing both enemies at the same time, because you really, really need to get your times optimal on this chamber to do well. It's going to be super annoying because there is a fourth wave, right? The third wave is the Ruined Drakes, and 2 of them, so you want to AoE them down as fast as you can. The last wave is going to be an Eremite Scorching Lore Master and an Eremite Gale Hunter. These are the Eremites that summon an additional pet that fights alongside them. So for the Gale Hunter, it's the bird. For the Lore Master, I forget what it is. It's like some fire thing. Just remember, if you have AoE, if you have Kaza or Sucrose Venti to pull them together for you, you can just AoE them down. And if you do kill their summoned pet, they will deal a big amount of damage to the Eremites as well as stun them for a very long time, giving you a lot of DPS time. So you can just DPS them down, and hopefully the time you want to go for is about 8:30-ish to 8:45. I know that's a tall order. Don't feel too bad if you get like 8 minutes or 8:20 on your first couple attempts, but once you get used to the fight and how to deal with the enemies, try to shoot for as much time as you can. I know that's a lot to ask because, again, it's 4 waves of enemies here that you have to kill in like a minute and some change. That's a lot. A minute and 30 seconds, excuse me. And then that's not even talking about the second half. Second half, bring your Hydro characters out. If you have Nuvolette, congrats. You have a free second half of Chamber 12. He makes this half very, very free. Everyone else that doesn't have Nuvolette, please bring your best Hydro, units out. For free to play players, this is most likely going to be Xin Cho. If you do have Yulan as well, even better. Bring both. Why not? If you're not using them on the first half, but definitely bring some sort of Hydro so that you can deal with all of the Pyro shields that are on the second half of this chamber. So this one consists of 3 waves. The first one is going to be the Dendro Samatril and 2 Pyro Abyss Mages. The Dendro Samatril, remember they spawn the annoying vines that will block your path. So for melee users, this is going to be annoying. If you can get rid of him as soon as possible, you can even prevent the whole vines blocking you thing he casts. And then you have 2 Abyss Mages who will, I'm sure you know how to deal with them, break their shields, and you can kill them quite easily. The next part's going to be pretty annoying. I'm not going to lie to you. This is why this is the hardest chamber. You have 2 Abyss Lectors to deal with right after that. If you don't know, Lectors, when they get down to about a quarter of their health left, they will generate a Pyro Shield that you have to destroy as fast as you can to actually kill the Lectors. Now, to help with this, they also summon like this meteor thing that comes crashing down. If you break it, it will destroy a chunk of their shield as well as stun them. Try to shoot those, or try to kill those if you can with any Hydro AoE damage. Honestly, it is a really hard chamber. I'm not gonna lie to you. This chamber was the hardest for me again. Um, and that's not even the end of it. You still have to kill 2 Lectors, and then after that, you have the 2 Black Serpent Knight Wind Cutters. These are the 2 sword guys. You've probably seen them in the chasm if you farmed any of the materials down there. These guys, super annoying as well, but not as bad as the Lectors in my opinion. So you can bring them together with any sort of Animo grouping character. You can do that and then just AoE them down. And that seems to be what worked best for me. I I do believe if you have a shield that they will gain a buff, I believe. I might have to quote me on that, but just be mindful if you're using a shield on this chamber. But yeah, this one is really, really hard, so don't feel bad if you have to struggle on this one and you have to redo it a couple times to get some good times on the first half. It did take me a while, so don't be discouraged. Keep trying different teams, trying different stuff, and you'll get the hang of it eventually. I believe in you. Second half, or excuse me, chamber 2, probably the easiest chamber in the whole thing, in my opinion. For the first half, you're gonna have to fight a regular Magokenki. This is not the trio. This is just literally a regular Magokenki. So remember, when you knock off about 20-25% of his health, he will do the big AoE slam down the sword move, and it makes this field of like ice damage that consistently hurts you. You can ignore it if you have a shielder, and you can just power through it. Other than that, just remember that his moveset has him moving around the arena when he like does like a backdash to do some attacks and stuff like that. It can be annoying to deal with, but honestly, we've seen this boss so many times in Spiral Abyss, I don't think he's that bad anymore. Second half, New Fontaine mechs. We have the Samurais, and then we have some Rift Hounds. So they spawn. This is another spawning in waves type thing. So you're gonna get a group of Samurai. Remember to kill them together so that the other one doesn't get buffed. If they get buffed, they end up doing a lot more damage, and they end up healing a bunch of their healths, which is not good. We want to kill them as fast as possible. So practice on killing them at the same time or making it really, really close. Next up are the Rift Hounds. If you've never fought these before, remember that the element that the Rift Hounds are what they're weak against. So they're actually weak against Geo. So if you have any, Navia, Chiori, Arataki Ito, they're going to do well against them. Because remember, when you keep hitting them with their own element, they'll do this yell. They do get a bit stronger when they do it, but they also lose Geo resistance. So it can help you if you play around it. Otherwise, remember that they also chew through shields, meaning they'll eat your HP even if you have a shield out. But it's not really a big deal because there's only a few of them this time around. And then you'll get the the mechs in different waves as well. Not much to say about them. Just AoE them down, group them up. Same deal as before. I didn't think, again, I didn't think this was too hard to deal with. I know this big construction mech can be annoying because it does like that spinning brain attack, and if you don't have a shield, you're just getting knocked and stunned over and over again, and then that can be annoying. So just bring a shield if you want to power through that, or just be mindful of it. But other than that, I thought this chamber was pretty easy. Chamber 3. I hate this boss. It's called the Algorithm of Semi-Intransient Matrix of Overseer Network, or just the big gigantic Dorito, whatever you want to call it. This boss, I highly, highly, highly recommend you bring any sort of Electro Dendro team. Doesn't matter who, because this boss likes to go invisible constantly, and the easiest way to pull it out of the invis state that it goes into is to do a quicken reaction. That's just a mixture of Electro and Dendro, and it will pull it out of invisible state, and it will stun it for a very long time, allowing you to do a bunch of damage. Now, if you don't bring those two, you can still damage it while it's invisible, but it can be a little tricky, right? Depending on what character you're using, and can be annoying. So again, that's why I highly recommend just make it easier for yourself, Electro Dendro, and then just call it there. The second half might be a little bit scary for some older players out there that remember the consecrated beasts in the Spiral Abyss before. They have made their return. You're going to have to deal with 3 waves here. So the first wave is going to deal with the 2 Fatui skirmishers and 1 pyro agent. This one should be pretty easy. Just remember that the skirmishers will always like do this back jump when you get too close. So you can always try to group them up. Try to kill them before they get their pyro shields so you can save yourself some time. Remember to focus the skirmishers though, because the agent will always follow you. They will always, even though they go invisible, they'll go straight to you. So don't feel like you have to group them up. Just go for the skirmishers. Don't let them get away. Kill them as fast as you can. And in fact, that strategy is going to carry over to the next 2 waves. So after that, you're going to get the red vulture plus the 2 crabs. Or it's either the vulture or the scorpion. I forget. But one of the waves, the same strategy is going to apply here. So if you get the red vulture with the crabs, remember that the crabs have fire shields, so you can bring Hydro to, break down the shields and then do damage to them. Focus the crabs, or if you get the scorpion, the seahorses. Focus those monsters as much as you can, because the consecrated beasts, in case you don't know, they're very aggro and they will be on you all the time. So don't worry about them like, oh, they're gonna run away. No, they won't. They love you and they want to fight you as much as they can. So get rid of the crabs while simultaneously dealing damage to the vulture or the scorpion. While they're attacking you, just do a bunch of AoE, and this chamber should be great, or should be easy. It's not as bad, again, as Chamber 1. I would say it's a little bit harder than Chamber 3 because the Consecrated Beast can do a lot of damage if you're not careful, so be sure to bring some solid shields, in my opinion, or a solid healer to keep you alive when dealing with their attacks. The Seahorses also have Electro Shields, just keep that in mind. You can also bring, honestly, just bring any element to deal with them other than Electro, of course, if you want to destroy their shields as fast as you can. Pyro's okay. Hydro does okay, I think. Any element, really. Just want to get rid of the seahorses while the scorpion is chasing you. So you have to deal with 3 waves here, which I know sounds like a tall order. Again, this seems to be the trend that Hoyoverse is going for, where they summon waves and waves of enemies that you gotta kill in the same amount of time. So pretty rough. But as you can see, it was still doable. So let's talk about what I did for the team setups for Spiral Abyss. So when I looked at the enemy details and I saw this annoying thing, the first thing that I did was that I picked my Hyperbloom team straight up. Or at least I should have. But I was experimenting with other stuff on stream if you end up watching the VOD. But I did my Hyperbloom team. If you don't know what that looks like, it is Cookie Shinobu with Jingcho, Nahida, and then I usually use Kirara. I use Kirara because she gives a shield, as well as activates Dendro Resonance, so that means more elemental mastery for everybody on the team, which is always a good thing. for more hyper bloom damage. This is the team that I use to easily kill this thing. Now, the way that I do Spiral Abyss is that I try to just 3-star the later chambers, or at least some of the more difficult ones, focus a team just for that, and then change or work around teams for the one that's giving me the most trouble. So in this case, 3 I knew wasn't gonna be that bad because I can easily kill this thing with a Hyper Bloom team. But this one, because it gave me more trouble and I wasn't able to 3-star it with the Hyper Bloom team I had before you, I had to switch it up. So this team was mainly just to 3-star the last chamber, so I don't have to worry about it. So my second half team, you might be wondering, okay, what did you use for second half? I used my Navia team. So that consists of Navia with Farina. I use Jean and Zhongli. And the only reason I use Jean is because of the team-wide heal that her burst gives when Farina is constantly draining HP. You don't have to use Jean in this team. I know it's a lot of 5-stars, so a lot of free-to-play players are looking at this and going, ugh. You also don't have to use Farina. I just pulled, for these characters because I really liked Farina. But Navia doesn't have to work with them if you don't have her. Like, you can also use Chiori for more Geo sub DPS damage. You can give her Bennett for even more heals, more damage. You can give her, like, there's a lot of sub DPS options. Zhongling still works here pretty well. Kazuha for help grouping up enemies. Like, there are a ton of options for this team. I'm just using what I have and like my best options, of course, for Spiral Abyss. But yeah, this is what I used to 3-star basically Chamber 2 and 3, which I was able to do with the Hyper Bloom as well. And this is what my teams were looking like. Now for Chamber 1, I had to switch it up. And this is where, if you guys were in chat when I was streaming it, I appreciate everyone that gave me some help and some tips on who I should try using and stuff like that. So I used, I still used my Navia team on the second half because honestly, Navia is super great. If you have her, she's an amazing character and I recommend pulling for her. However, if you have New Valette, like I said earlier, you are having an easy time on the second half all day, every day. And if you guys remember, I made a video on New Valette basically saying, hey, pull this character if you want an easy time in Spiral Abyss. I'm not joking. And it's coming, it's just proving what I said to be true. Like, I'm sure all the New Valette users are laughing at everyone that's struggling on second half because they're just like, ha, New Valette go burr, and they just hold their charge attack and just kill everything in like 10 seconds. So, hey, they're eating pretty good right now, but hey, I was still able to do it in Navia. Honestly, you can use anyone you want for second half, just make sure to bring some sort of Hydro break and some AoE grouping for these chambers. I think that's the biggest thing that can help you out. So any DPS works well. You can use Arlecchino. If you pulled for her, you can do Tartaglia's Vape team. If you have that, you can do Chlorine. I think she works better second half, or excuse me, first half. But yeah, there's a ton of options. You can do Hydro, double Hydro, Vape, Utao, Yoimiya. Might be a little bit hard with those Lectors though in the first chamber. Some sort of overcharge team if you have Chevrus. A lot of options to try out. So for my first half team, for Chamber 1 specifically, I ended up going back to an old classic. I haven't used her in a long time, but she's still really good. Raiden Shogun is who I used, and then I ended up doing I believe we did... I'm actually gonna have to look at the VOD real fast. I actually tried a lot of different teams, thanks to chat suggestions with Raiden Shogun, but what we eventually ended up settling with is a Farina team. So I did this, whoops. I did have a Farina team with Raiden Shogun, and it was like that. I actually used an underrated 4-star in my opinion for Raiden Shogun here. I used, well, the first two aren't really underrated. We have Farina, who again, big hydro damage, and you do a bunch of electro charge, Kazuha grouping, buffing, very much needed. Dori, was my healer to offset Freya's HP drain. I have Dory built as a, just as a basic healer. Between her and Raiden, you will never, ever, ever have a lack of energy. Everyone will have their bursts up all the time, almost instantly, because of the constant energy flow from both of these Electro characters, not to mention Electro Resonance. So Raiden Shogun's burst uptime is basically all the time, which is a very, very good thing. So I think Dory is an excellent choice here and a bit more free to play friendly. Remember, you don't have to actually use the same characters that I have up here. If you don't have Farina, you can try Zhongling for more sub DPS. You can try Bennett for a more like a pure hyper carry DPS, or Kujo Sara as well, for more buffs for just Raiden Shogun to do all the damage. You can also use Jincho or Yelan if you have them, because in fact, what I did was I switched up my Navia team a little bit and I put Yelan and Jincho on the second half, and these two are basically here just to destroy all of the pyro shields from the lectors as fast as possible. And then we have Navia here to line up her shots to do a bunch of damage. And then for those that don't know, when Navia actually does her skill, she does get a conversion to her normal attacks to Geo, so she can do a bit more crystallized, reactions, which is good for her, and do a bit of damage to activate both Yelan and Jincho's ults. And then Zhongli here just to be a shielder, just so he can ignore a lot of the damage, and honestly using his burst to petrify stuff like the Samaturl and the Lectors from doing their annoying spells, and to stop the Sword Boys from moving around too much is actually really, really valuable. So really nice burst from Zhongli there, and of course the shields. Pretty much helped carry, and it did take a bunch of tries, but I was able to actually beat floor 1 after trying for about, I want to say, like, it took me 30 minutes to an hour of just trying over and over again. And that's the thing I also wanted to talk about before this video gets way too long, and it already is. I saw a lot of comments, both on the stream and just in the stream chat in general, about people just saying stuff like, oh, the Spiral Abyss, it's too hard, I don't want to try it, or they saw me struggling and they're like, this is the Spiral Abyss now? Yikes, I don't want to play this anymore. And I understand if you don't want to partake in challenging content or hard content, then that's completely fine. If you're like, hey, it's not worth it to me to stress over 800 Primo Gems or whatever, that is absolutely fine. I am not saying you're a wuss if you don't try it and you should just man up and try it or whatever. That's not the point here. However, I still think you should try it. At least floors 9 and 10, right? Those ones are super easy. Get at least the 400 out of the 800 gems that you're being given, right? At the very minimum, do that. Floor 11 even, I still think is pretty easy as well. If you can't do it, then you can't do it. But still at least give it a try. Now for floor 12, I honestly enjoy that the Spiral Abyss is getting harder. Maybe not in the way that they're doing it with a bunch of waves of enemies, but I do enjoy that it is challenging. And that I do enjoy that, hey, I actually had to think outside the box and not just use the same teams that I've been using over and over again. But I do like figuring out the abyss, so to speak. Like, I like trying, okay, does this team work? Does this team work? Does this team work? And then finding a team that works, it's a lot of fun for me. And then when you do, it's like, okay, how can we optimize our fights to get the most time? And then you start experimenting with stuff like, okay, what can I do when these enemies show up? What can I do to make this less annoying? How can I destroy this Lecter shields faster so that I can, move on to the next enemies faster? How can we group up these enemies? Etc, etc. Like, it's fun figuring it out. Try to have a more positive mindset if Spiral Abyss frustrates you. That's something else I always see a lot of time. Like, I literally saw a comment that said, hey, if I don't beat Spiral Abyss floor 12 in one try, then I'm gonna give up. And I thought that was weird because, like, I didn't beat this floor in one try. It again, if you saw the VOD, it took me like an hour and a half. to figure it out. And that was with chat's help. If I didn't have help from chat, probably would have taken me a bit longer. It's like, do you go into Dark Souls games or Elden Ring or stuff like that, and you're like, if I don't beat a boss in one try, I quit. Like, what? I'm sure you struggled and had a lot of hard times in other video games other than Genshin, right? Like, did you give up on Mario because you fell off one time? Or did you give up on, I don't know, did you give up on Call of Duty because you got shot once and died? Like, some of you might be actually saying yes. But I didn't. I kept playing, and that's the same mentality I have here. Like, yeah, there are a lot of times I failed the Spiral Abyss, or I wasn't happy with a run. And you know what else is there? A convenient retry button. And it's fun to try it again and, you know, maybe optimize your gameplay more, or try a different team, see if it works better for you, stuff like that. But I really think more people should just have a more positive mindset when it comes to Spiral Abyss. Like, yeah, it can be frustrating sometimes for sure, especially when you're playing, you know, your rotations aren't optimal or whatever. Fine, but don't forget you also have a lot of time to beat the Spiral Abyss now. You have a whole month. It's not just 2 weeks. So feel free to take your time. Try one day. If it doesn't work out, be like, okay, I'll try another day. I'll try, you know, another day if it doesn't work out again. Maybe you understand what you're lacking, and now you're like, okay, I need this type of character to make this chamber a lot easier. You have a lot of time to build them. A month is a long time to build a character up. You could either, you know, get their talents up, get a better weapon for them, get their, you know, better artifacts. You never know with your RNG. You could end up getting a huge improvement for your DPS. Get like a lot of crit damage, crit rate, or something that they were lacking before. Tackle it again, and now you're noticing a huge difference. So that's kind of the mindset I hope more players get. Maybe you kind of realize it after watching this video. Probably not. Post-recording Calamity here, but also pre-editing Calamity, if that makes sense. I realized I forgot to show my characters and my builds. Usually when people do these kinds of videos, they show their characters so people can kind of copy the builds that they did. But to be honest, none of my characters are built in any sort of unique way. I kind of just did the standard thing, to be honest. But let's just take a look at all of my characters that I used. Navia, my main carry, I do have her signature weapon, and I know a lot of people are going to roll their eyes when they see how many signature weapons I've rolled for, but you don't have to always pull for a signature weapon. In fact, you don't ever have to. You can always just use a solid 4-star or alternative 5-star weapon if you've happened to pull for other weapons in the past. Like, let's say you have a Wolf's Gravestone from the standard banner. That's also a good alternative to have. For her artifacts, it is going to be the Nighttime Whispers of the Echoing Woods. I spent, no lie, 3 months farming for these artifact pieces, specifically for the Sands, and it's not even that good. It does have main attack percentage, geo damage goblet, some crit rate crit damage, and a crit rate circlet because she just needs it. She gets a lot of crit damage from her other substats, so she's good. And then you take a look at her stats. She has a solid 74% crit rate with a 152%, almost 153 crit damage. She is at Constellation 0 because I never pull for Constellations for 5 stars, and she is at 798. The talents are kind of weird just because I'm still farming the weekly stuff. Next up is Farina. Yes, I also do have her signature weapon. I know, I'm terrible. Artifact, she is using the Golden Troop. There are different ways to build Farina if you want to, like the Mary Chelsea Hunter set if you want, and stuff like that, but I'm fine with her having the Golden Troop. Makes her bubble buddies do a lot more damage. And she's pretty much just built for crit rate, crit damage, energy recharge, some HP in there. A lot of HP in there. In fact, we forego the Hydro Goblet and I went for more HP, then more crit rate, energy recharge, stuff like that. Also at Constellation 0, excuse me, 6, 10, and 9 for her talents. I actually crowned her elemental skill because it's so good. Jean! She's using an event weapon, the Festering Desire. Honestly, you can replace this with something like a Favonia's sword for more of a team-based energy support kind of thing. If you want, also works that way. She does have the Veridicent Veneer. This is because I used her for other teams where Swirl was important. However, for this Navia team, it is not doing anything at all. In fact, I should swap the artifact set piece to be like a Noblesse Oblige set or something to be more optimal, but I'm not. I'm not optimal at all. I've lost a lot of 50-50s to Jean, and as you can see, she is at C4. None of these really help the Navia team. I guess this one gives a bit of movement speed and attack speed, which is kind of nice, but it's not a big deal. Her talents are also 3, 8, and 11. Next up is Zhang Li. This is a mistake here. I swap weapons around a lot. He should be using a Favonius Lance for sure. This would give him more battery utility and more energy overall, but to be honest, when I use this Navia team, I feel like everyone has so much energy and burst all the time. That's why I always forget to swap back the Favonius weapon. Next up, he's also using Tenacity of the Millith for the attack buff and shield strength buff. And he's primarily built for like some sort of damage, but mostly shields. As you can see, HP, and then I just went 1 crit damage. Circlet. I could get even more shields if I went HP on the circlet, but that's okay. Talents, his talents are out of whack, 5, 8, and 10. I could honestly get this up even more. I get an even shieldier Zhongli shield, but I've never felt like I needed it because his shield is so good already, but I could always get it even more beefier if I wanted. C0. Kazuha I did use. I don't know if he's on any of the winning teams though, but I'll just showcase him just in case. He is using a Zithos Moonlight, so finally not a signature weapon, right? Veridicent Veneer for built around Elemental Mastery and Energy Recharge, so Elemental Mastery on all 3. Constellation 0, Talent 9, 10, and 10. Except is Raiden Shogun, she has a Staff of Homa, and this is what I mean by like you don't always have to pull for signature weapons. I got an extra Staff of Homa while trying to pull for a different weapon. I believe it was like Yolan's weapon back in the like last year's banners. So I got an extra one, I gave it to Raiden Shogun, and that's pretty much how that went. Artifacts. She's using the Emblem of Severed Fate, built around energy recharge, crit rate, crit damage, attack percentage, stuff like that. Constellation 0, and 4, 8, and 10 for the burst. Nahida. She does have her signature weapon, just because this character was amazing, is amazing. So of course I went all out when her banner was first released. Artifact, she is using the Deepwood Memory set. She's an excellent user of this set, and she is also built around Elemental Mastery and some Energy Recharge, and that's pretty much all she needs on her build. She just happened to get some crit rate and crit damage on some of her artifacts here. Of course, when I don't need the crit rate, crit damage, I'm getting them. Just saying. C0. And her talents are 7, 9, 9. Of course, I can get these even higher if I wanted to. Yolan. She does have her signature weapon, I know. Emblem of Severed Fate, because we want that burst uptime, and it also increases burst damage. Now this is actually a 5-star that I do have a constellation of, very rare. Limited 5-star I should say. It's for the extra usage of her elemental skill, which is really, really good. It helps a lot with exploration stuff, but also really good for doubling up on energy. Talents 8, 10, 10. Very, very solid Yolan. Very happy with her build. Kirara being a character that I use a lot, she does have the Sapwood Blade. She could also use the Favonia Sword instead. She is using the 2-piece Tenacity, 2-piece Vorakash's Glow. Just gives her a bunch more HP, a bunch more shields. Constellation 1 only. And she's at 198. So we can get a tiny bit more beefier on the shield. Jingcho, one of my oldest built characters, still using the Sacrificial Sword at Refinement 5. Artifacts using the Emblem of Severed Fate, built around sub DPS stats, so crit rate, crit damage, attack percentage, there's hydro damage bonus. You don't really need that much energy recharge when you're using Sacrificial Sword, so it frees you up to go for more offensive stats. It's really, really nice. C6, of course. Again, I've been playing this game for many years. One of the oldest characters. He's one of the original starting characters. So makes sense that he's maxed out. He's not even crowned. Want to know something crazy? He is not crowned. I could crown him, but I'm not gonna. Crown his burst and his skill for more damage. Last but not least, I did use Dory, and as I've said before, she is built as a healer, so she has the Sacrificial Greatsword. She uses it for elemental skill. Just gives her a bunch of extra particles. Her burst is up all the time. She does have a basic Noblesse Oblige set, as opposed to a healing set. It gives a nice buff. Great for aggravate teams, like the Raiden Shogun one I was using. She has that C5. I am missing that C6, but it's not a big deal. Her C6 sucks. She is at 1, excuse me, 1, 10, and 11 for her talent levels. Could get those up higher. And those are basically all the builds for the characters that I use in Spiral Abyss. But that's it for me. I hope this video was helpful to someone out there that is struggling with the Spiral Abyss. But if you are, you know, wondering what other teams you could use, or enemy questions, stuff like that, feel free to leave a comment down below. Also, if you beat the Spiral Abyss yourself, feel free to help out other players that might be struggling as well. Let them know what teams you use. Maybe there's some other teams that are, you know, really good that no one's using. Let them know. You know, there was someone in my chat that said they use Chlorinde without a healer. And they beat the Spiral Abyss with it. To me, that's crazy. Like, I need my healers, I need my shielders. I could never play like that. So that might not work for me, but it might end up working for other players and vice versa. So always try out new stuff. Let me know how it works out for you. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to leave a like and or subscribe to the channel. Helps me out a lot, and I'll see you all in the next video.